Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics.
That is Mike. I am Reed.
Coming to you live from Dragon's Lair, San Antonio.
Saturday night. When I look at it, we had started a few weeks back. We reviewed the Hulk movie from 2003 and kind of had some comic book films that me and Mike like that typically do not get the greatest reception online in terms of how they are seen. So we kind of started calling that the We Love 'Em, You Hate 'Em series that we had. And me and Mike kind of came up actually with a list of about 4 or 5 of them that we really liked ourselves. There's probably even more than that. And so one of the underrated ones that we started looking at was the movie The Phantom.
1996.
96. Now this one's interesting because it's not Marvel or DC. The Phantom is one of those forgotten superheroes.
So wait, when was Blade?
Blade was late 90s. I think it was like 98 or 99.
Was there... So when did the Batman franchise end?
Batman franchise fizzled out like a year after this one because 95 was around Batman Forever. So it's still back in the mid-90s when we weren't getting a lot of comic book adaptations, period. And then even a character like the Phantom, someone who really had his heyday was probably in the early 20s and kind of got passed by the Batmans and Supermans and the Marvel comic characters.
He came out in 36, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It came out in the comic strips in 1936. And then he made it into comic books.
Yep.
People argue that he was the very first superhero because
him and Zorro.
He had the mask like Zorro and
the whites of his eyes kind of
yeah. And he had the bodysuit. Zorro didn't have the bodysuit.
The classic kind of underpants over the thing that Superman and Batman would make popular.
He was probably more prototypical. Although people point to Zorro, Robin Hood, and Tarzan, of course.
As those early.
But when you think about Superman didn't come out till 38. 2 full years before that. There's also Flash Gordon.
Correct.
And Buck Rogers.
Yeah, a lot of those golden age ones that have kind of just been forgotten a bit, and then kind of the DC and the Marvel Comics characters and popularity sort of erased.
So I bought this movie on DVD about 15 years ago, and I put it on, and I loved it, and I went down a Phantom rabbit hole because. There's a special feature thing at the end, and it just takes you into this whole world that I never really knew. And so the movie gets tanked, I think, because, it's a predecessor to modern superhero movies. It came out of what became Batman Cheese. In the
60s, kind of Batman and Adam West stuff.
And then the cheese of the 90s, the Batman Forever.
Yep.
So I'll call it the Batman cheese sauce that sometimes Hollywood, goes down. And so here we are in 1996. Someone decides, if you like Batman movies, you're going to love a Phantom movie.
Yep.
And it had, who was the guy? Billy Zane. And
Titanic fame, yeah.
Catherine Zeta-Jones is
Before
in it?
Zorro, yeah.
Oh my gosh. It was such a fun movie to watch.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that stands out to me is it's just a fun movie. I think one of the things that I really miss about comic book movies, and I love a lot of the ones we've gotten now, don't get me wrong, the Dark Knights of the world and those kind of movies definitely have their place. But we've gotten to a point where I feel like Hollywood's almost embarrassed of the comic book itself and kind of just wants to, how do we change this as much as possible to make it palatable?
But they've been trying to do that, forever.
Yeah.
And then this movie came out and just said, forget about it. We're
going
full.
to make it really exactly like the comics.
Yeah, and it's a breath of fresh air to watch it now. It gives you this kind of Indiana Jones vibe.
A little bit. Yep.
And there's lots of action, jungle action. There's a guy riding a horse through the jungle. There's explosions. It takes place like back in the 1930s.
Yep.
So when they go to New York City, there's the Gothic architecture. Not Gothic, but Deco. Everything is Deco. You can tell like the set designers and the costume designers had tons of fun doing it. It was just a fun movie to watch. Breath of fresh air. Like I said, like you don't know what's going to come out of Marvel and DC these days. This had nothing to do with either of that. It had no designs on
sequels or a
tie-ins
universe or anything like that. Yeah.
They just went out and had fun doing a period picture from the 1930s, which I love that part of comic book history. The inception, the 30s and the 40s, and how simple and wonderful and amazing and imaginative it was for its time.
No, it just captures the true kind of spirit of a comic book. And I think one of the things me and Mike with this channel I've always wanted to do is kind of keep comics, these things, at the heart of it. And what I really like about The Phantom is if you were somebody who read the comic strips, it reads exactly like that. It takes the plot like that, and not in a kind of boring, stupid kind of way or any negative way. More just it's true to its source material. And I think what I really liked about the movie, one, the costume is accurate to the comics. You can look at the costume, and I know read online on it, a lot of people give the full purple bodysuit costume a lot of junk. It's accurate to the character.
He even had the undershorts on the outside.
Yep.
Probably the first one to do that.
And it's really cool to see them actually just faithfully adapt it, and that instead of going, hey, you know what, let's, now modern days we'd make the costume like part black, part purple, mainly probably mostly black with like a purple tinge or something, and it'd be body armor.
There'd be armor, there'd be gauntlets that did things.
The digital masks that they do now, where he presses a button and it appears kind of thing.
There was none of that.
And it was just really cool to see kind of a throwback to, nope, this is what it would look like. This is what a guy wearing this kind of suit would be there. And I thought that was great. I also really liked the performances in the film. And that, look, are they a little cheesy and over the top? Yes. But again, part of that is it's a comic book. Comic book villains act comic book villain. They're not intended to be the guy who's at your local kind of store or something and act like a real person. I like that the movie had fun with, no, this is a fictional world with a fictional character. And these are the evil, the bad guy is just a bad guy. Yeah. And they just have fun with it. And I think that's kind of the thing that this movie does well is, I think in comic books we're kind of trapped in this sort of parody kind of thing where they want to take things seriously, but then they also want to have like ridiculous humor integrated into the film at the same time.
Yeah, and then you're trying to create a fictional world, and I think for years they've tried, well, how can we make it feel more real? Mm-hmm. Well, no, comic books are, the reason you buy a comic book is because there's a werewolf and
fighting a guy dressed in all white throwing moon rings at them.
Right. Or a guy dressed in all purple with 245 pistols
hanging out in the jungle with his pet wolf.
And his horse.
And it's I really do love that the movie just had fun with that, and that I think
there were pirates. I mean, it's got it all.
It's just a fun kind of movie, and I think one of the things I like about it, it's a perfect movie if you just really want to just sit back and have fun. If you want to slip into a different world for a little bit and just kind of have an adventure type of thing.
And go on the adventure, go on the adventure with them, and the characters go on the adventure like the guys from New York, like they all pick up and it's unrealistic. Like the old seaplanes from the 1930s, there's no way it's
going to make like a transatlantic journey to the jungle.
There's no way he's going to make it to, and he's holding on to the little pontoon.
He holds on to the pontoon
all the way there. No, but that's comic books. That's
you could completely pick up a comic and see that in a panel, and you'd never think twice about, the Phantom held on to the plane all the way.
Yeah, even though it's like probably a 24-hour journey.
24-hour journey,
yeah. Yeah, and there's none of that. It's just like he holds on. They're in New York City, and then the next scene they're landing in the jungles of Bengali, and it had
a lot of fun with the world. I think a lot of credit should go to Billy Zane too for playing the Phantom. He got in good shape for it, but not kind of that ridiculous, overly steroidy type shape. You could tell this was someone who, like, hey, just if a peak human being got in shape, what would they look like? And I thought that brought a lot of believability to
Not
it.
Todd McFarlane shape.
Yeah, not the, like,
from
you
Image
know,
Comics.
and that's consistent with the Phantom.
Yeah.
When you look at the Phantom in the strips, the Phantom is not built like the Hulk or Thor. It's very much emphasized as this is what a regular man. And he just did a very good job of capturing that, like, adventurer kind of spirit, but being like a good guy who seemed good-natured, and was very easy to root for.
And he played his role comic-y.
Mm-hmm.
Like
yeah.
he was arrogant and kind of bold at times in a way that seems out of place in the modern movie. Like, oh, he's just I don't know how you would say it. Like he's acting up. Like what am I trying to say?
He's not just playing it up or anything like that. Like he is playing the character.
He is playing the character.
And I think
like
that works because
what was that scene when he's on the horse? Yeah, what was that scene on the horse when the plane crashes into the mountain and he looks back at the girl and he's like, she goes, I can't believe we just did that. And he goes, I can't believe we did that either. And she's like hanging off the thing and falls onto the horse as he's galloping under. I mean, it was.
Yeah, there's so many unrealistic things that happen.
But that's what made it so
charming.
charming.
But it's a comic book.
Yeah,
it's got that charm to it, and I think what I really appreciate in a movie like this is it took care of people who were fans of the characters first, and it kind of went, hey, if the general audience likes it, cool. If not, but people who like the Phantom, you're going to get your cinematic adaptation of the Phantom. And especially in today's landscape, and this is one of the reasons this movie stood out to me, Mike, is there's so many characters now who get adapted who never actually truly get adapted. If you are a fan of Barry Allen, the Flash movie did not adapt.
You
Barry
had to
Allen
go there. You had to go there.
Contest. If you are a fan of Namor, they did not adapt Namor. And the thing
or
is,
Thor, like you were saying.
Yeah, even Thor, who I think they did well. There's things they change.
He didn't talk like Thor.
And the big thing that stinks is when it works like a situation like Thor, it's okay because you get a lot of those movies and they can fix it. When it's a character who doesn't work, like, and I hate to keep throwing this at Mike, but like The Flash, there are some people who are going to associate the character of Barry Allen with that movie. And it's all very likely that The Flash could get benched for 10 to 12 years as a character and not be in another movie because of what happened in this one. Where you had a movie where the character did not act like Barry Allen, didn't look like Barry Allen.
It wasn't Barry Allen.
Did not capture his character. And in the Flash movie, he didn't even fight a freaking Flash villain. He fought a Superman villain from a movie a decade ago.
You're killing me, Smalls.
And what they're going to do is, people go, oh, well, people must just not like The Flash. No, it has nothing to do with The Flash. It has everything to do with the fact that you didn't make a movie that even
about the Flash.
resembled The Flash.
Right.
And the great thing with the Phantom is it doesn't have that issue. If you like this character, it adapted the character.
So much fun.
Both its good and its bad elements from some things. But if you liked it, you can sit down and watch this movie, and it's a comic book. It's proud of its source material. It's proud of the creators that had it, the way the characters talked. And I think even the actors brought that to that. Catherine Zeta-Jones plays this very over-the-top type of character
villainess
who talks like a villainess from a 1930s comic book.
Yeah. And Billy Zane plays the Phantom just like the Phantom would talk in the comics, you know.
No, the main villain, Treat Williams, plays him in the film. He plays like a stereotypical 30s gangster.
Yeah.
Over the top, chewing the scenery. He's even got the evil mustache when you're waiting for him to find a lady and tie her to a railroad track. Yeah. But it works because there's conviction behind it. And I think that's the thing. I think sometimes people confuse adapting the source material and it not translating. And I think the biggest thing is, no, it's when you yourself don't believe in the source material or like the source material and then you adapt it poorly, it doesn't come through. And I love that the Phantom, you could tell there's a ton of love for the world that was built by the people who created the Phantom, for all of the creatives who were responsible for it, and for that character itself.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those movies that gets a bad reputation, but I think if you honestly just sit down, remove yourself from the MCU, the DCEU, the Nolan films, the Arrowverse, whatever it is that you watch, remove yourself from that for a little bit and just watch this as a comic book adaptation, adapting a comic book character. Not what would happen if the Phantom was in New York for real. Just know what is the comic book.
He pays the cab driver and Jules.
Yeah, he just pulls out Jules. There's great stuff like that. And I really just love how it had adapted to that world and hit it. And you know, if this got made,
it made no apologies or there were no efforts to try and make it something that it wasn't. And and I think that's the heart of what you're getting at, Reed, is that too many times they try and make a comic book movie something that it isn't. And, you know, sometimes they succeed, but by and large, when they do that, it loses something.
Yep.
And this movie had none of that. It was just all about the fantasy and the fun of
this little universe that the Phantom exists
yeah,
in.
there's a guy that runs through the jungle and you know, saves damsels in distress and fights evil.
No, it's one of those things. The concept in itself is ridiculous. It's a guy who lives in the jungle, is a descended upon role where it's handed to the sun. It's existed for like 400 years.
And the skull
He has
cave.
a pet wolf, lives in a skull cave.
The skull cave looked cool though,
But
didn't
it
it?
all looks good, and again, it's just perfectly comic book.
Yeah.
And it's not the best movie in the world. I'm not sitting here telling you it's like the greatest comic book movie of all time. It's
But if
not.
you're a comic
But if you're a
fan,
comic fan who
you'll enjoy
appreciates
it.
old school comics, this is a great movie to watch, to have fun with. The other part that only stands out to me, and I'm amazed with it, is looking at the budget of this movie. And then you look at the costume was real. The stunts were done as realistically as they could. Very minimal CGI, except for where it's necessary. There's a few scenes with some dodgy CGI. It's the mid-90s.
Yeah,
It's
you
not-
got it.
it's-
Yeah.
It's advanced
The
through the last
skulls.
30 years.
Yeah.
But so many of the practical effects on the stunts and things that happen, and it brings that realism to it, where the fights, even if they're kind of goofy and staged, feel more real than some of these CGI spectacle things where you can tell it's people looking at a green screen with a green dot on their hand that's punching
I
another
mean,
green dot.
that 1930s New York
kind of
cityscape,
aesthetic that they had, yeah.
that was no small feat to pull off because there was no green screen.
No, and they're doing it with a minimal budget. It just shows how creative Hollywood
And
used to be.
they had all the old cars, and it was just like, yeah.
It's just a lot of fun. I think it's one of those films that if you haven't seen it before and just have let the reputation of it scare you off, if you're a comic book fan, watch it. I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. If you did watch it when you were younger, like me, and then kind of guys judged it as this like silly kind of movie, and then you revisit it now, it's a refreshing kind of film to watch. It's something where you can tell the creators loved comic books, and if you're a comic book fan, it's absolutely refreshing to watch something that's not embarrassed by what these are, but instead embraces it
And they
really
leaned
has
into
fun
it.
with it.
They leaned into it, and they get huge props from me and Reed for doing that.
Yep, exactly. So hopefully you can check out The Phantom. You'll probably be able to find it pretty cheap. I think it's on Max or HBO Max or whatever they're calling it these days for free. But even if you want to pick up a DVD, it's really not that expensive to pick one up. Definitely worth a couple hours of your time on a lazy Sunday or something like that to revisit it. And maybe you'll come around to our side from hating it to loving the movie like we do. So hopefully you'll check it out. And we'll kind of keep revisiting some of these classics that have been forgotten by time. But thanks for your time. And as always, leave your comments below, and we'd be happy to cover any movies that you think need reviews or anything like that. So thanks again. That's Mike. I'm Reed. Thanks for joining us.